Have you ever felt like you're running on empty? Like you've given so much, for so long, that when you look in the mirror, you no longer recognize the woman, the man staring back at you? Like your heart has become a cracked cup, unable to hold anything for yourself? If you're nodding quietly right now, then you've come to the right place. Welcome to Where Hearts Rest, where weary hearts find their way home to themselves. I know you've tried so hard. You've loved everyone around you with everything you had. You've sacrificed, you've given, you've placed everyone else's needs above your own. And now, in quiet moments like this, there's a small voice inside you whispering, "What about me? When is it my turn?" That's not the voice of selfishness. That's the voice of your soul calling you home. Over 2,000 years ago, a man sitting beneath the Bodhi tree discovered a truth that changed the world. We cannot love others fully until we learn to love ourselves. Not with self-indulgence or arrogance, but with deep, gentle compassion, the way a mother loves her suffering child. That man, whom we call the Buddha, taught that loving kindness begins with ourselves, not because we're more important than anyone else, but because when we learn to rest in our own embrace, we become a wellspring of refreshment for the world. In the hours ahead, you'll meet someone like you, someone who once thought they were broken because they couldn't give anymore. But then they discovered something miraculous. They weren't broken. They just needed to be loved by themselves. You'll witness the magical moment when an exhausted heart learns to bloom again. When harsh self-criticism transforms into gentle lullabies. When taking care of yourself stops being a sin and becomes the most sacred gift you can offer the world. Together, we'll explore the path of balance between loving yourself and loving others. You'll understand why putting on your own oxygen mask first isn't just an airplane rule, but wisdom for life itself. And most importantly, you'll remember what it feels like to come home to your own loving, patient, forgiving heart. So breathe deeply with me now. Let your shoulders soften. Allow yourself to receive, perhaps for the first time in a very long time. The journey from empty cup to overflowing heart begins right now. And it starts with a story I know you'll recognize yourself in. Let me tell you about someone I'll call Alex. And as I tell this story, I want you to notice how many moments you see yourself in it. Alex woke before dawn every day, not by choice, but by habit. There was too much to do, too many people to care for, too many responsibilities waiting. From the moment eyes opened, the mind began making lists. Who needed what today? Which problems needed solving? Which hearts needed comforting? Do you know this feeling? The sense that you're the coordination center of the entire world, and if you stop even for a second, everything will fall apart. Alex moved through each day like a skilled dancer in a ballet that never ended. Every gesture calculated to serve someone else. Smiles appeared automatically when someone needed encouragement. Hands were always ready to help, even when they trembled with fatigue. Words were always gentle, soothing, encouraging, even when the heart sometimes just wanted silence. The Buddha once taught about what we call dukkha, a Pali word many translate as suffering, but its true meaning is much deeper. Dukkha is that profound sense of dissatisfaction, the persistent unease when life doesn't match our expectations. It's the feeling that something is always missing, no matter how hard you try. Alex lived in dukkha without knowing its name. There was a constant tension in the chest, as if the heart was trying to pump something that was no longer there. There were nights Alex lay awake, staring at the ceiling and wondering, why do I feel so empty when I've given so much? The answer lay in another Buddhist teaching Alex had never heard of: attachment or clinging. Not clinging to possessions or fame, but clinging to always being the giver, always being needed, always being strong. Alex had become attached to the identity of someone who never needed help, never showed weakness, never said no. But there was a secret Alex kept carefully hidden, even from herself. Sometimes, in rare quiet moments, a small voice would whisper, "I'm tired. I can't do this anymore." And immediately, another voice, louder and harsher, would shout back, "Don't be selfish. People need you. You don't have the right to be tired." This is what the Buddha called the inner critic, those automatic thoughts that had become habits, those voices in the head learned from a society that says, our worth lies in how much we can give, not in who we are. Alex didn't know she was living in a cycle that Buddhism calls samsara, not the samsara of many lifetimes, but the samsara of days repeating endlessly, each day identical to the last, each day depleting a little more. Wake up. Give. Get tired. Feel guilty for being tired. Give more. Sleep feeling like it wasn't enough. Repeat. Do you recognize this cycle? Have you ever felt like you're living on a wheel that keeps spinning and you don't know how to step off? In those rare moments when Alex paused to breathe, a strange feeling would emerge. It was like standing in an empty room where the echo of your own voice sounds foreign and cold. Alex had given so much that she no longer knew what she actually wanted, needed, or even who she was when there was no one around to care for. This is what the Buddha called non-self misunderstood, not the enlightened realization of no fixed self, but the complete loss of self-awareness from living too long for others. And that's when strange emotions began to surface. Sometimes, when someone asked for help, instead of the familiar warm feeling of being needed, Alex felt an odd heaviness. A small part inside would whisper, "If I don't help, will anyone else?" Then came anger, an emotion Alex didn't dare acknowledge. Anger at having to always be strong. Anger that no one asked how Alex felt. Anger that everyone else seemed to have the right to be tired, weak, or need help except Alex. But as soon as that emotion appeared, it was pushed down by waves of guilt. How can I think like this? I'm a terrible person. People trust me, and I'm. This is exactly what the Buddha described in the First Noble Truth. Suffering exists. But importantly, he didn't say suffering was bad or should be avoided. He said we need to recognize it, acknowledge it, understand it. Alex was suffering, but had no language to understand it. No one had ever told Alex that feeling depleted was normal, that needing care was human, that setting boundaries wasn't selfish but wise. And so Alex continued, day after day, carrying a heart that grew heavier each day, a spirit that grew more weary, and a deep sense that something was very wrong, but not knowing what it was. Every night Alex went to sleep with the same thought: tomorrow I'll do better. I'll give more, love more, be stronger. But better, in Alex's mind, meant needing less, being less tired, being less human. Alex didn't know that better could mean being more compassionate with herself, more understanding of her limits, and braver about saying, I need love too. Is Alex's story your story? Have you ever felt like you're living as the cup that someone else always drinks from, and you're simply the cup, useful, necessary, but never filled? The Buddha had a message for hearts like Alex's, like yours. This suffering isn't your fault, but it also doesn't need to last forever. There is another way. And that way begins with a moment of simple but powerful recognition, a moment Alex was about to experience. There are moments in life when truth suddenly becomes so clear it hurts. For Alex, that moment came on an ordinary morning when nothing special happened, which was precisely what made it special. Alex was preparing for another day like every other. The to-do list was already ready in mind. Everything arranged to serve others' needs. And then, standing before the bathroom mirror, Alex saw what she had been trying not to see for months. The eyes in the mirror were empty. Not tired. Alex was used to being tired. But empty. As if the person in the mirror was just a shell, an actor playing the role of someone always okay, always strong, always ready. And for the first time, in a very long time, Alex whispered to herself, I don't recognize myself anymore. That was the moment the Buddha would call right awareness, not mindfulness in the sense of meditating on a cushion, but mindfulness in the sense of finally seeing truth clearly. Seeing what was actually happening, instead of what we hoped was happening. Alex stood there another minute, letting that feeling sink in. The feeling of having lived someone else's life for too long. The feeling of having forgotten how her own heart beat when no one needed it. That day proceeded like every other from the outside. Alex smiled, helped, listened, comforted. But inside, something had shifted. A part of Alex began to observing how she automatically said yes when she wanted to say no, how she unconsciously put everyone else's needs before her own, how she didn't even know what she wanted, because no one had asked for so long. This is what Buddhism calls witness consciousness, the ability to step out of life's automatic script and actually see what's happening. That evening, when Alex finally had a quiet moment, a question arose in her mind. When was the last time I did something just because I wanted to? Alex tried to remember. Tried to find a memory of choosing based on her own true desires, not because someone needed it, expected it, or would be disappointed if she didn't. And couldn't find an answer. That's when the tears began to fall. Not tears of anger or frustration, but tears of loss. Tears for the person Alex used to be before becoming the person everyone needed. In Buddhism, we speak of the noble truth of suffering, the first truth. But suffering here doesn't mean we must be miserable. It means life contains difficult moments, and those moments aren't signs that we've done something wrong. Alex was experiencing that moment. The moment of realizing that endless giving hadn't brought the happiness she'd expected. Instead, it had created a profound sense of emptiness. And then, as usual, the inner critic began speaking. "You're so selfish to think like this. Do you know how many people wish they had a life like yours? Do you know how many people need you?" But this time, something was different. This time, Alex was too exhausted to even argue with that voice. And in that absolute fatigue, a small silence appeared. In that silence, another voice, gentler, wiser, whispered, "What if you also deserve to be loved?" Alex sat in the darkness, letting that question hang in the air. It felt both dangerous and hopeful. Dangerous because it challenged everything Alex had learned about her value and role in the world. Hopeful because, perhaps, just perhaps, there was another way to live. That night, Alex lay awake and felt her body, really felt it, perhaps for the first time in months. How tight her shoulders were, how clenched her jaw was, how her heart beat as if always on alert. And Alex realized, I've been living as if in a constant state of emergency. As if the world would collapse if I wasn't always present, always ready. This was a profound insight. In Buddhism, we call this recognizing impermanence, the understanding that the world will continue turning whether we stop or not. That our resting doesn't mean we're abandoning responsibility, but that we understand we're also part of this world that needs care. The next morning, Alex woke with a different feeling. Not energy, it was too soon for that, but a kind of quiet determination. Determination to explore the question that had emerged the night before. What if I also deserve to be loved? But Alex didn't know where to start. How do you learn to love yourself when you don't even know who you are, when no one needs you? The answer would come, but not in the way Alex expected. It would come through a small moment, a seemingly simple decision, but one that would change everything. That day, when someone asked Alex to help with something that would take the entire afternoon, the only afternoon Alex had for herself that week, something different happened. Instead of the automatic response, "Of course," Alex paused. Just 1 second. Just one breath. But in that second, Alex felt her body, felt the fatigue, felt the need for rest. And then, with a trembling but determined voice, Alex said, "I'd really like to help, but I can't today. Could we arrange it for another time?" The world didn't collapse. The other person was a bit surprised. Alex had never said no before, but they said, "Oh, okay. No problem." And Alex stood there, trembling, but alive. Guilt began to surge, but beneath it, something else. A small feeling of freedom. That was the first step. Not a big step, not a dramatic moment of enlightenment. Just a small no said to someone else, and a silent yes said to herself. The Buddha taught that the second noble truth is about the origin of suffering, and that origin is attachment, clinging. Alex was beginning to see that she had been clinging to the identity of always being present, always strong, always not needing anyone. But that identity, however noble, had become a cage. And the key to opening that cage? It was simpler than she could have imagined. It was compassion for herself. It was understanding that she too deserved rest, care, and love. Alex didn't know this yet. Didn't know that the journey from empty cup to overflowing heart had begun with one simple word: no. No to exhaustion. No to living like a machine. No to the idea that her worth lay only in her ability to serve others. And yes, the first yes to herself, the hardest, most important, and most healing yes Alex would learn to say. The real story was just beginning. In the days following that first no, Alex felt like learning to walk all over again. Each time someone asked for help, instead of the automatic response, Alex began to have a moment of pause, just one breath, to ask herself, can I do this without depleting myself? Sometimes the answer was still yes. Sometimes it was no. And gradually, Alex began to understand the difference. One morning, while drinking coffee in the usual rush, Alex looked out the window and noticed the small garden that had been neglected for months. The flowers that once bloomed were now withered. The soil was dry and cracked. Weeds grew wild everywhere. And in that moment, Alex saw a painfully clear image of herself. I've done the same thing to myself as I did to this garden, Alex whispered. I've been so busy tending everyone else's gardens that I forgot about my own. This was the moment the Buddha would call right understanding, not understanding from books, but understanding from direct experience. Seeing the connection between the outer world and the inner world. Alex stood up, walked outside to the garden, and knelt beside the withered flowers. For the first time in months, Alex actually touched the soil, felt its moisture, smelled the scent of life and death intertwined. If I want these flowers to bloom again, Alex thought, I need to start from the roots. I need to water, fertilize, and patiently wait. And then, like a flash of light, that awareness expanded. If I want my heart to bloom again, I need to do the same thing. This was when Alex encountered a concept she had never heard of: metta, loving, kindness in Buddhism. But Alex didn't know this word yet. Alex only knew that something in her soul was thirsting to be cared for with the same gentleness she had given to everyone else. In Buddhism, metta is often translated as loving, kindness. But its meaning goes deeper than that. Metta is the ability to see the inherent goodness in all beings, including yourself. It's the understanding that we all want happiness, all want to be free from suffering, all deserve to be loved. But in the Buddhist tradition, there's something many people don't know. Metta always begins with yourself. Not because we're more important than anyone else, but because if we don't know how to love ourselves, we cannot love others fully. Alex started with the smallest things. On the first day, Alex decided to spend 10 minutes, just 10 minutes, sitting in the garden with a cup of tea, doing nothing else. Not checking the phone, not thinking about who needed what, just sitting. At first, it felt like torture. Alex's mind was full of thoughts. I should be doing this. That person needs my help with that. I'm wasting time. But Alex tried to stay. And in that silence, something strange happened. Alex began to hear sounds that hadn't been noticed in months. Birds singing, leaves rustling, the sound of her own breathing. And for the first time in a very long time, Alex felt present. Not present for someone else, but present for herself. This is what the Buddha called mindfulness, the ability to be here, right now, with what's actually happening instead of what we think should be happening. On the second day, Alex decided to do something she hadn't done in years. Cook a meal just for herself. Not a quick meal so she could care for someone else, but a meal prepared with loving intention. Alex chose favorite ingredients, cut each piece of vegetable mindfully, smelled the aroma of food cooking. And when she sat down to eat, alone, in silence, Alex felt like she was getting reacquainted with an old friend. Herself. But not all moments were easy. Guilt appeared like dark clouds. I'm being selfish, the familiar voice whispered. There are so many people who need me, and here I am indulging myself. This was when Alex needed to understand another important Buddhist teaching, right intention. Not about always having good intentions, but about understanding the true motivation behind actions. Alex began to ask herself, why do I feel guilty when I care for myself? Who taught me that my worth lies only in my ability to serve others? And then Alex realized this guilt wasn't hers. These were messages that society, family, culture had transmitted over many years. Messages saying that good means never thinking about yourself. But the Buddha taught something different. He taught that we cannot give what we don't have, cannot love others with an empty heart, cannot nourish others with a depleted spirit. Alex began to see that caring for herself wasn't avoiding responsibility, but preparing to fulfill responsibility better. In the third week, Alex decided to do something she hadn't done in years, take a walk alone. No specific destination, no purpose other than moving and breathing. While walking, Alex began to notice how she talked to herself. Each time a self-critical thought arose, I should be doing this instead of walking. I'm being too lazy. Alex tried something new. Alex imagined talking to a small, sad child. What would she say? What tone would she use? "It's okay, dear," Alex whispered to herself. "You need rest. You've tried so hard." For the first time, gentle words were directed inward instead of outward. This was the beginning of self-compassion. In Buddhism, there's a practice called metta meditation, loving kindness meditation. Tradition teaches us to begin by sending love to ourselves. May I be at peace. May I be happy. May I be free from suffering. May I live with ease. Alex didn't know these words yet, but she was learning to live them. Each day, Alex spent a little time watering the inner garden. Sometimes it was 10 minutes of silence. Sometimes it was a carefully prepared meal. Sometimes it was just saying no to something that would exhaust her. And gradually, Alex began to notice small changes. Shoulders weren't tense as often. Sleep was deeper. Smiles were no longer tasks but became natural. Most importantly, Alex began to feel like she was coming home to herself. But there was something Alex hadn't realized yet. These changes weren't just affecting herself. They were beginning to affect everyone around her in ways Alex couldn't have imagined. When you begin to love yourself, the world doesn't just not collapse, it actually begins to bloom in miraculous ways. And Alex was about to discover that. There was a voice that Alex had lived with for so many years that she had almost forgotten it existed. This voice woke up with Alex every morning, went to sleep with Alex every night, and commented on every decision Alex made throughout the day. "You haven't done enough. You should try harder. People will be disappointed in you. You're selfish for thinking about yourself." For years, Alex had thought this was the voice of conscience, of responsibility, of morality. But now, as she began to listen carefully, Alex realized something frightening. This voice never, not once, said anything kind. The turning point came one afternoon when Alex decided to decline helping with a non-urgent task so she could rest. Immediately, that voice began. "You're so selfish. People trust you and you're refusing them. You're a bad friend, a bad family member, But this time, instead of accepting those words as truth, Alex stopped and asked, "Wait a minute. If a friend came to me and said they were tired and needed rest, what would I say to them?" The answer was obvious. Of course, you need rest. You've tried so hard. Taking care of yourself is important. So why, Alex asked herself, don't I say the same thing to myself? This was the moment Alex began to understand an important concept in Buddhism, right speech, not just how we speak to others, but how we speak to ourselves. The Buddha taught that speech has the power to create reality. When we constantly tell ourselves harsh, critical words, we create an inner reality full of suffering. Conversely, when we learn to speak to ourselves with compassion, we create space for healing, and growth. Alex decided to experiment. Each time the critical voice appeared, Alex would stop and ask, "What would I say to a friend in this situation?" At first, this felt strange, even fake. But Alex persisted. When the critic said, "You're too slow," Alex replied, "You're doing your best. Everyone has different paces, and that's normal." When it said, "You should be more perfect," Alex responded, "No one is perfect, and that's exactly what makes us human." Gradually, Alex began to understand that the critical voice wasn't her real self. It was just a thinking habit formed over many years, a pattern that could be changed. In Buddhism, there's a teaching about Buddha nature, the idea that beneath all the layers of thoughts, emotions, and habits, everyone has a fundamental nature that is pure, compassionate, and wise. Alex began to search for that voice, the voice of Buddha nature within herself. And Alex found it in moments of silence, in the warm feeling when watching a sunset, in the natural gentleness when caring for a flower. This voice wasn't as loud as the critic, but it was steadier, wiser, and always kind. One day, when Alex made a small mistake at work, the kind of error that would have caused Alex to berate herself for a whole week before, something different happened. Instead of, "You're so stupid, how could you make such a mistake?" the new, gentler voice said, "Oh, that's a small error. Everyone makes mistakes. What matters is what you learn from it." Alex sat in amazement. For the first time in her life, Alex had treated her own mistake with compassion instead of punishment. And something miraculous happened. Instead of feeling terrible all day, Alex quickly corrected the error, learned the lesson, and continued work with a light heart. This is the power of self-forgiveness. In Buddhism, forgiveness doesn't mean ignoring or justifying wrong behavior. It means recognizing that holding on to guilt and resentment only creates more suffering without solving anything. Alex began applying this principle to bigger mistakes from the past. Times Alex had been too harsh with someone because she was tired. Times Alex hadn't been present when needed because she was too exhausted. Times Alex had felt resentful toward others for always having to give. With each painful memory, Alex practiced saying, "I did my best then with what I knew. I'm not perfect, and that's normal. I can learn and grow from this experience." This process wasn't easy. There were days when the critic returned strongly, especially when Alex was stressed or tired. But now Alex knew it was just one voice among many, and Alex could choose which voice to listen to. One evening, sitting in the garden with her favorite cup of tea, Alex realized something amazing. For the first time in years, Alex actually enjoyed being with herself. Not because Alex had become perfect. Not because all problems had been solved. But because Alex had learned to treat herself like a dear friend, with patience, understanding, and unconditional love. This is what the Buddha called metta, directed inward, loving kindness for oneself. And when Alex learned this, something magical happened. that love began to naturally overflow outward. Alex began to notice that she was more patient with others, less judgmental, more forgiving. Not because she was trying to be a better person, but because when you stop fighting with yourself, you have more energy to love others. In Buddhism, there's a saying, when you light your own candle, you don't diminish anyone else's light. Instead, you make the whole world brighter. Alex was learning to light her own candle. And that light was beginning to illuminate not just Alex's life, but the lives of everyone around her. But Alex didn't realize this yet. Alex only knew that life was becoming lighter, and for the first time in a long time, Alex felt like she was living instead of just surviving. The journey from harsh inner critic to compassionate inner friend doesn't happen overnight. It requires daily practice, patience with yourself, and the courage to challenge familiar voices. But with each day of practice, Alex was creating new neural pathways in her brain. Pathways of compassion instead of criticism. Pathways of acceptance instead of resistance. And most importantly, Alex was learning that loving herself wasn't the final destination, but the beginning of an entirely new way of living. A way of living that Alex was about to discover would change not just herself, but the world around her. There's something strange about new beginnings. They're both hopeful and terrifying. Alex stood at a crossroads in life. One path led to the familiar road of always giving until exhausted, the other to a completely new path Alex had never walked before. The path of loving herself. That morning, Alex woke with a simple but revolutionary decision: 10 minutes. Just 10 minutes each day dedicated to herself. Not for work, not for solving someone else's problems, not for checking the phone or planning the day. 10 minutes to simply exist. Sounds simple, doesn't it? But when Alex sat down with a cup of coffee, put the phone aside, and actually tried to just sit still, Alex realized this was harder than caring for 10 people at once. Alex's mind was like a monkey jumping from branch to branch. I should check email. That person needs me to call back. Today's to-do list is so long. I'm wasting time. This is what Buddhism calls monkey mind. The Buddha described the human mind like a drunken monkey, stung by a bee and possessed by a demon, always restless, never still. But Alex didn't know this terminology. Alex only knew that sitting still for 10 minutes felt like an entire hour, and every passing second was a struggle with herself. Maybe I'm not the type of person who can meditate, Alex thought. Maybe I'm too busy, too responsible to just sit like this. But then Alex remembered the moment in the mirror, those empty eyes, the feeling of being a stranger. And Alex thought, if I can spend hours helping others, why can't I spend 10 minutes helping myself? Day 2 was harder. Day 3 as well. But on day 4, something shifted. Alex sat with a cup of tea, and instead of fighting the thoughts that arose, Alex decided to simply observe them. Like sitting by a window and watching clouds pass by, not trying to change or stop them, just noticing. Oh, that's a thought about work, Alex recognized. That's worry about that person. That's guilt about sitting here. And the miraculous thing was, when Alex stopped fighting these thoughts, they began to move through the mind naturally, like real clouds drifting across the sky. This was the beginning of mindfulness. In Buddhism, mindfulness doesn't mean emptying the mind or stopping all thoughts. It means becoming the observer of your own mind, with curiosity and without judgment. In the first week, Alex felt like learning a completely new language. The language of being with herself without needing to do anything at all. In the second week, Alex began to recognize patterns in her thinking. How every time Alex started to relax, the mind would immediately create a to-do list. How guilt appeared instantly whenever Alex did something for herself. How interesting, Alex thought. I've lived with these patterns for years without ever really seeing them. This is what the Buddha called right mindfulness, the ability to see clearly what's actually happening in the mind, instead of being swept away by the stories the mind tells. By the third week, something miraculous began to happen. In the quiet moments between thoughts, Alex began to feel something she had forgotten long ago: peace. Not peace because everything was solved. Not peace because there was nothing to do. But peace that came from simply existing, without needing to prove or achieve anything. For the first time in years, Alex felt like she could truly breathe deeply. Not shallow breathing to prepare for the next task, but deep breathing and simply enjoying the feeling of air entering and leaving the lungs. This is what Buddhism calls anapanasati, mindfulness of breathing. The Buddha taught that breath is the anchor that keeps us in the present moment, because breath is always here, right now. Alex didn't know these terms, but Alex was experiencing their power. One morning, while sitting with tea during the sacred 10 minutes, Alex realized she was smiling. Not smiling for any specific reason, but smiling because she felt light. When was the last time I smiled without it being for someone else? Alex wondered. And Alex couldn't remember. This made Alex realize more deeply how she had been living. Even Alex's joy had been defined by the ability to please others. Alex had forgotten the feeling of simple happiness from just existing. But now, in these small moments, Alex was learning to find it again. The 10 minutes began to feel like a gift rather than an obligation. Alex began to look forward to these moments, like anticipating meeting a dear friend. That dear friend was Alex herself. One day, an emergency arose right during Alex's sacred 10 minutes. Someone needed help immediately. Alex's old reaction would have been to immediately drop everything and run to help. But this time, Alex paused. Just for a second. And in that second, Alex asked herself, is this really an emergency? Or have I been conditioned to think that everyone else's needs are always urgent? Alex realized that in most cases, these emergencies could wait 10 minutes. The world wouldn't collapse if Alex completed her time for herself first. "I'll come help you right after I finish this," Alex said. "Just 10 more minutes." For the first time, Alex had set a boundary around her sacred time. And the world didn't collapse. The other person was a bit surprised, but they agreed to wait. Alex sat back down and completed her 10 minutes. But now there was a different feeling in the air. A feeling of self-respect. A feeling that Alex mattered too. When Alex finally went to help the other person, Alex felt more present, more focused, and had more energy to give. Because Alex was giving from a full cup, not an empty one. This is what the Buddha taught about right action. Right action isn't just doing good for others, but acting from a place of balance and wholeness. People around Alex began to notice the change. "You seem different," a friend said. "I don't know why, but you seem more peaceful." Alex smiled. "I'm learning to love myself," Alex replied. "Sounds selfish," the friend said jokingly. Alex thought carefully before answering. "You know, I used to think that. But now I realize that when I take care of myself, I have more to give to everyone. It's like you can't pour water from an empty cup." This was the first time Alex had spoken publicly about her journey. And surprisingly, instead of judgment, the friend became curious. "How did you learn that?" they asked. Alex thought about the question. "It started with 10 minutes, Alex said. "Just 10 minutes a day for myself. It sounds small, but it changes everything." And that was the truth. Those sacred 10 minutes had become the foundation for every other change in Alex's life. They had taught Alex that she deserved time, that Alex's needs mattered too, that self-care wasn't a luxury but a necessity. But most importantly, they had taught Alex how to say yes to herself before saying yes to everyone else. And from that small yes, an entirely new world began to open. A world where Alex didn't just exist to serve others, but actually lived for herself. But with this change, Alex was about to face a new challenge, learning to set boundaries without feeling guilty. And that would be the next lesson in the journey from empty cup to overflowing heart. There's a strange paradox in learning to love yourself. The more compassionate you become with yourself, the more you realize how uncompassionate you've been in the past. Alex was experiencing this as she began to become aware of boundaries, or rather, the lack of boundaries, in her life. Boundaries. The word felt foreign and somewhat scary to Alex. For years, Alex had prided herself on being always available, always present, always saying yes. These were the things that defined Alex as a good person, a reliable person. But now, Alex was beginning to understand that having no boundaries didn't just harm herself, it didn't really help others either. This realization came gradually, through small moments. Once, an acquaintance called Alex at 11 p.m. to talk quickly about a non-urgent issue. Previously, Alex would always answer, listen for an hour, and then lie awake until 2 a.m. unable to sleep. But this night, when the phone rang, Alex looked at the clock and asked herself, do I need to be available to everyone at all hours of the day? For the first time, Alex let the phone ring and didn't answer. And the world didn't collapse. The next morning, Alex called back with a message. Sorry I couldn't answer last night. After 10 p.m. is my rest time. Can we talk today instead? The other person completely understood and even apologized for calling late. Alex realized that for years she had created an expectation that she was always available, and now Alex could gently change that expectation. This is what Buddhism calls right speech applied to boundaries. Not saying no harshly or angrily, but saying no with compassion, both for yourself and for others. A bigger challenge came when someone asked Alex to help with a large project over the weekend. The weekend Alex had planned to rest after a stressful week. Alex's automatic response was, of course. I'll cancel my plans. But now, Alex had learned to pause before reacting. In that moment of pause, Alex felt her body, the fatigue in her shoulders, the heavy feeling in her chest when thinking about cancelling rest time. And Alex realized, if I say yes to this, I'm saying no to myself. And I deserve consideration too. I understand this is an important project, Alex said carefully. But this weekend I have plans to rest. Could we find another way to complete it, or adjust the deadline? The silence on the other end of the line made Alex worry. Maybe I've disappointed them, Alex thought. Maybe I'm being selfish. But then the other person said, oh, okay. I understand. I'll ask a few other people or we can postpone it until next week. Alex hung up with mixed feelings of relief and worry. Relief for protecting her rest time. Worry about whether she had done the right thing. This was the moment Alex needed to understand an important Buddhist teaching, the middle way. The Buddha taught that truth often lies between extremes. Alex had been living at one extreme, always saying yes, always being available. But the opposite extreme, never helping anyone, being completely selfish, wasn't the answer either. The middle way is learning to balance. Helping others from a place of fullness, not from a place of depletion. Saying yes when you can truly give without harming yourself. Saying no when giving would make you resentful, tired, or bitter. That weekend, when Alex actually rested instead of working on the project, Alex realized something amazing. Alex felt better, and when the new week began, Alex had more energy to help everyone. Could it be, Alex wondered, that boundaries actually help me become a better helper? The answer was yes. here's why. When you always say yes, you eventually give from a place of resentment and exhaustion. Helping becomes an obligation instead of an act of love. People can sense this, even if they don't say it. But when you set boundaries and only say yes when you can truly give from the heart, your help becomes authentic and much more powerful. Alex began experimenting with smaller boundaries. Not checking email after 8 p.m. Dedicating one weekend morning to herself before doing anything for others. Saying, "Let me check my schedule and get back to you," instead of immediately saying yes. Each time Alex set a small boundary, two things happened. First was guilt, and second was freedom. Guilt because Alex had been conditioned to think her value lay in always being available. Freedom because Alex was beginning to realize she had the right to choose how to use her time and energy. One day, someone reacted poorly to Alex's boundary. "You've changed," they said sadly. "You're not the person who's always ready to help like before." These words hurt. Alex felt like she had wounded someone she cared about. But that night, while reflecting, Alex realized something important. I'm still ready to help. But now I help from a conscious and balanced place, instead of from habit and fear. Alex understood that some people might not be happy when you start setting boundaries, especially if they're used to you always being available. But that doesn't mean your boundaries are wrong. In Buddhism, there's a teaching about loving detachment. You can love someone without having to completely sacrifice yourself for them. You can care without needing to control or rescue. Alex began to understand that boundaries were actually a form of love. Loving yourself enough to protect your energy. Loving others enough to give from an authentic place instead of resentment. Interestingly, when Alex began setting boundaries consistently, those around her began to respect them. They stopped calling late. They began asking before assuming Alex could help. They even began setting boundaries for themselves. Alex realized she had unconsciously taught people how to treat her. By always being available, Alex had taught that her time and energy had no value. By beginning to set boundaries, Alex was teaching that she mattered too. One evening, sitting in the small garden, now well cared for and full of flowers, Alex realized she had learned one of the most important lessons of her life. Boundaries aren't walls to separate others. They're fences to protect the garden within you, so it can bloom and then share its beauty with the world. When you care for your inner garden well, you have more flowers to give. When you protect your energy, you have more energy to share. When you respect yourself, you teach others how to respect you. Alex was learning to love without losing herself. To give without depleting. To say no while still being full of love. And in the process, Alex was discovering that it's possible to love more deeply, more authentically, and more sustainably when you start from a place of loving yourself. But Alex still hadn't realized the full impact of these changes. hadn't realized how learning to love herself was beginning to transform not just Alex's life, but the lives of everyone Alex touched. The ripple effect of self-love was about to begin, and it would be more beautiful than Alex could imagine. There are changes in life that happen so gradually you don't notice them until someone points them out. For Alex, the first change others noticed wasn't what Alex did, but how Alex was present. "There's something different about you," Alex's closest friend said during a casual coffee meeting. "I can't say exactly what it is, but you seem lighter. Like some burden has been lifted." Alex was surprised. "Really? I don't feel like I'm doing anything differently." "That's exactly what's strange," the friend continued. "You're still you, but there's something in the way you listen, the way you sit, even the way you breathe. You seem more present." Alex reflected on this observation. Perhaps it was because in recent weeks, Alex had learned to truly be with herself during those daily meditation minutes. Perhaps when you learn to be present with yourself, you naturally become more present with others. In Buddhism, there's a concept called presence, not just being physically there, but being there with full attention, with an open heart, with a mind undistracted by other worries or plans. Previously, when Alex sat with someone, although Alex always listened and responded appropriately, part of Alex's mind was always elsewhere, thinking about who else needed help, what needed to be done next, or how to solve the other person's problem as quickly as possible. But now, when Alex sat with someone, Alex was really there. Not because Alex was trying to be a better friend, but because Alex had learned to be with herself. And when you stop running from yourself, you don't need to run from the present moment. This change affected every conversation. People began sharing more deeply with Alex, not because Alex asked more questions, but because they felt truly heard. "I don't know why," a colleague said, "but talking with you now feels like being truly seen." "Did you take some communication course?" Alex laughed. "No, I'm just learning to listen to myself more." This is one of Buddhism's deepest teachings, interconnectedness. The Buddha taught that nothing exists independently. Everything is connected, interdependent. Your inner state doesn't just affect you, it affects everyone you meet. When Alex began to be at peace with herself, that peaceful energy radiated around her. When Alex stopped fighting with herself, everyone around her also felt less tense. But there was another change Alex noticed in relationships. Alex began to see people differently. Previously, Alex often looked at others through the lens of need, who needed help, who was struggling, who needed to be rescued. Alex had unconsciously turned everyone into projects that needed to be completed. But now, when Alex looked at others, Alex saw complete, complex human beings with their own strengths and capabilities. Alex began to see Buddha nature in everyone. "You know," Alex said to a family member going through difficult times, "I really admire how you're facing this situation. You're stronger than you think." That family member sat quietly for a moment. "No one has ever said that to me before," they whispered. "People usually just tell me what I should do to fix everything." Alex realized she had changed her approach to people in pain. Instead of trying to fix or solve, Alex began to simply be present and see the strength already within that person. This is what the Buddha called compassion without attachment. You can care deeply about someone without needing to rescue them. You can love without needing to control the outcome. This change affected Alex's closest relationships most powerfully. Family began to notice. "Mom seems different," one child said to another. "She still helps us, but she doesn't look tired like before. And she smiles more," the other agreed. Not because she has to smile, but really smiling. Alex overheard this conversation and felt both warm and sad. Warm because she saw that her changes were having a positive impact. Sad because she realized she had been living as an inauthentic version of herself for too long. But the most important thing Alex realized was she didn't need to try to change how she interacted with people. The change happened naturally when Alex changed her relationship with herself. There was one particular conversation that gave Alex deep insight into this. It was with a friend who had known Alex for many years. "I have to admit," this friend said, "I used to sometimes feel guilty when sharing problems with you." "Why?" Alex asked, surprised. "Because I knew you would try to fix everything, even when you already had too much on your shoulders. I felt like I was taking advantage of you, but I also didn't know how to stop you." Alex sat quietly, letting these words sink in. "And now?" "Now," the friend smiled, "I feel like you're really here with me in the problem, instead of trying to pull me out of it. And somehow, that helps much more." This conversation made Alex realize something profound. When you always try to rescue people, you unconsciously send the message that they're not strong enough to face their own problems. But when you're present with them without trying to fix, you honor their strength and capability. In Buddhism, this is called empowerment through presence. Sometimes, the greatest gift you can give someone isn't advice or solutions, but loving presence and trust that they can find their own way. Alex also noticed a change in how people responded to Alex herself. They began asking about Alex's feelings, caring about Alex's needs. "Are you okay?" a friend asked, after Alex declined an invitation because she needed rest. "You sound tired." Previously, no one asked if Alex was okay, because Alex always appeared to be fine. But now, when Alex allowed herself to be more vulnerable, people began to see Alex as a human being with needs and emotions. "I am a bit tired," Alex admitted. "Thank you for asking. Do you want me to bring you something? Or can we meet another time?" Alex felt warmed by this concern. For the first time, Alex experienced being cared for instead of always being the caregiver. This is one of the miracles of learning to love yourself. When you stop pretending to be perfectly strong, people can approach you as a real human being. When you allow yourself to have needs, people have the opportunity to give to you, something they may have wanted to do for a long time but didn't know how. In Buddhism, this relates to the teaching of interdependence. We weren't born to be completely self-sufficient. We were born to be interdependent, to give and receive, to support and be supported. When Alex only gave without receiving, Alex had broken this natural balance. Now, when Alex learned to receive, relationships became more balanced and healthy. But there was another change Alex began to notice, a change that made Alex understand that loving yourself doesn't just change how you interact with people, it changes how you love. And that would be the next discovery in the journey from empty cup to overflowing heart. There was something Alex had never realized until beginning to love herself. The love Alex had given to others over many years, though sincere, was mixed with other things: fear, guilt, and the need for validation. Alex loved people, but within that love was a small part, almost imperceptible, that was asking, "If I love you enough, you'll never leave me, right? If I'm necessary enough to you, I'll have value, right?" But when Alex began to find safety and worth within herself, the love Alex gave to others began to change. It became cleaner, simpler, less demanding. This change became clearest in relationships with those closest to her. With family, Alex realized she had loved them very powerfully, but that love came with a need to control. Alex wanted them to be happy, but Alex also wanted to be the one creating that happiness. Alex wanted them to be safe, but Alex wanted to be the one protecting them from all harm. "I just want what's best for you," Alex used to say when trying to convince a family member to make a decision Alex thought was right. But now Alex realized that what's best, according to Alex, might not be what's best for them. And more importantly, the effort to control other people's lives, even with good intentions, was actually disrespectful of their journey. In Buddhism, there's a concept called loving without attachment. This doesn't mean loving less, but loving more freely. Loving without needing to control the outcome. Loving without needing the other person to become the version you think they should be. Alex began practicing this in daily interactions. Instead of immediately giving advice when someone shared a problem, Alex learned to ask, "Do you want me to listen, or do you want me to give my opinion?" Instead of trying to solve every problem for loved ones, Alex learned to ask, "How can I support you?" Or sometimes simply, "I'm here with you." This change didn't happen easily. There were times Alex had to clench her hands to avoid jumping in to solve someone's problem. There were times Alex had to remind herself, true love is trusting in other people's capabilities, not rescuing them. But the results were amazing. The people Alex loved began to bloom in their own way when they no longer felt pressure to live up to Alex's expectations. "Thank you for trusting that I could handle this problem myself," a family member said after successfully overcoming a challenge that previously Alex would have tried to solve for them. Alex felt proud in a completely new way. Not proud for having solved the problem, but proud for having enough love to step back and let them shine. In Buddhism, This is called mudita, empathetic joy, or joy in others' success. It's the ability to be truly happy when seeing someone grow and succeed, even when you're not the one creating that success. Alex also realized that her love became more generous in an unexpected way. Previously, when Alex gave from depletion, there was a small part of Alex always calculating how much she had given, what she got back, whether it was fair. But now, when Alex gave from fullness, that calculation disappeared. Alex gave because she wanted to give, not because she felt obligated to give. Alex helped because she felt joy in helping, not because she was afraid of being seen as selfish if she didn't help. "You know," a friend said, "there's something different about how you help now. Before, I always felt like I owed you something. Now, I feel like you help because you really want to help." Alex pondered this observation. Maybe, Alex thought, because now I help from love, not from fear. This is the difference between giving from fullness and giving from lack. When you give from lack, the receiver can sense that heaviness, that obligation. But when you give from fullness, the gift becomes light and free. In Buddhism, this is called dana, generosity or giving freely. Dana isn't just about giving what you have, but about the spirit in which you give. When giving comes from an open heart with no expectation of return, it becomes a spiritual practice, a way of cultivating compassion. Alex also began to realize she could love difficult people in a new way. There was someone in Alex's life, someone who was always difficult, frequently complaining, and never seemed satisfied no matter how hard Alex tried. Previously, Alex loved this person by trying to change them, trying to make them happier, more positive. But now, Alex realized that trying to change someone wasn't actually love. It was control disguised as love. True love is accepting someone exactly as they are, with all their flaws and annoying habits. This doesn't mean you have to tolerate bad behavior, but it means you stop trying to turn them into someone else. "I see you're going through a hard time," Alex said to this person during one of their particularly heavy complaining sessions. "That must be very exhausting." Instead of trying to convince them to see the positive side, Alex simply acknowledged their emotions. And something miraculous happened. They stopped complaining and began talking about the real pain they were feeling. Alex realized that behind the constant complaining was a heart in pain. When Alex stopped trying to fix and began simply being present with that pain, the other person felt seen for the first time in years. This is what the Buddha called compassion for difficult people. It's not about accepting bad behavior, but about seeing the pain behind the behavior and responding to the pain, not the behavior. Alex also discovered that when you love yourself, you have less need for others to love you in a specific way. This sounds paradoxical, but it's liberating. Previously, Alex often felt hurt when someone didn't express gratitude the way Alex expected, or when they didn't respond to Alex's love the way Alex wanted. But now, Alex loved for the joy of loving, not for the outcome. "I love you," Alex said to a friend, "and I don't need you to love me back in the same way." my love is a free gift." That friend looked at Alex with surprised and moved eyes. "No one has ever said that to me before," they whispered. "I always felt pressure to return affection in the way people expected." Alex smiled, realizing she had just given her friend a gift that Alex herself had just received: the freedom to love and be loved without conditions. The last thing Alex discovered about authentic love was its ability to heal, not just the receiver but also the giver. Each time Alex loved someone without expecting anything in return, each time Alex accepted someone exactly as they were, each time Alex gave from fullness instead of lack, Alex felt her heart expand a little more. In Buddhism, this is called the expanding heart. The more freely you love, the more capacity you have to love. The more you give without expectation, the more you have to give. Alex was discovering that love isn't a finite resource you need to conserve. It's a flowing spring. The more it's used, the more abundant it becomes. And the most miraculous thing? When Alex learned to love others freely and authentically, Alex also learned to receive love from others freely and authentically. For the first time in her life, Alex wasn't just someone who gave love, but also someone who received love. And in that balance, Alex found something she had been searching for her whole life without knowing it: completion. But this journey wasn't over yet. Alex was about to discover that learning to love herself and love others authentically was just the beginning of a much deeper understanding of life. An understanding of how to find perfect balance between self-care and serving others, the art of living that the Buddha called the middle way. There's an ancient story the Buddha once told about a musician who came to him seeking wisdom. The musician had been practicing spiritual disciplines with such intensity that he had made himself weak and ill, yet still felt no closer to enlightenment. Alex didn't know this story yet, but Alex was about to live it. In the weeks following the discovery of authentic love, Alex felt intoxicated by the freedom of setting boundaries and practicing self-care. It was like discovering a new sense after living without it for years. The relief was so profound that Alex began to swing toward the opposite extreme. "I need to take care of myself," became Alex's new mantra. And while this was true and necessary, Alex began using it to justify saying no to almost everything. When someone asked for help moving furniture, Alex declined, saying, "I'm practicing self-care." When invited to a family gathering that would require some effort to attend, Alex stayed home instead, reasoning, "I need to protect my energy." When a friend going through a difficult time asked Alex to listen, Alex felt a flutter of the old anxiety about being needed, and immediately said, "I can't take on other people's problems right now." At first, this felt empowering. Alex was finally putting herself first. But gradually, something began to feel off. The same emptiness that Alex had felt when giving too much began to creep back in, but from the opposite direction. One evening, sitting alone in the garden that had become Alex's sanctuary, Alex realized what was happening. "I've gone from one extreme to another," Alex whispered to the evening air. "I was giving too much, and now I'm giving too little." This is what the Buddha called the danger of extremes. In his story, he told the musician, "If you tune the strings of your instrument too tight, they will break. If you leave them too loose, they will make no music." The perfect sound comes from finding the middle way. Alex was learning this lesson firsthand. Total self-sacrifice was harmful, but complete self-focus was equally unbalanced. The answer wasn't to swing from one extreme to the other, but to find the delicate balance between them. But how do you find that balance? How do you know when you're giving from fullness versus giving from depletion? How do you distinguish between healthy boundaries and walls that isolate you from meaningful connection? The answer came, as many profound realizations do, through a moment of unexpected clarity. Alex received a call from someone who rarely asked for help, a neighbor who was usually fiercely independent. Their voice was shaky, vulnerable in a way Alex had never heard before. "I hate to bother you," they said, "but I'm at the hospital. Could you possibly? Would it be too much to ask you to pick up my prescription and maybe bring it by?" "I understand if you can't." Alex's first instinct was the new default. I need to protect my boundaries. But something made Alex pause. In that pause, Alex felt into her body, her energy, her emotional state. And Alex realized, I have capacity right now. I'm not depleted. This isn't someone trying to take advantage of my old patterns. This is a genuine emergency where I can help without harming myself. "Of course," Alex said. "I'll be there in 30 minutes. As Alex drove to the pharmacy, something felt different than it had in the old days of compulsive helping. There was no resentment, no sense of obligation, no internal voice keeping score. Instead, there was a quiet joy in being able to offer support to someone who truly needed it. When Alex arrived at the neighbor's house, they were effusive in their gratitude. "You didn't have to do this," they said. I know you've been taking care of yourself more lately." Alex smiled, realizing that even acquaintances had noticed the changes in her patterns. "I wanted to help," Alex said simply. "And I was able to help without it costing me anything I couldn't afford to give." This experience taught Alex something crucial about the middle way. It's not about rigid rules or automatic responses. It's about conscious choice in each moment, based on your current capacity and the genuine nature of the request. The Buddha taught that the middle way requires what he called right mindfulness, the ability to be fully present and aware in each situation, assessing it clearly without the distortion of past conditioning or future fears. Alex began practicing this more consciously. Instead of automatically saying yes or automatically saying no, Alex learned to pause and ask, "What is my energy level right now? Is this request coming from someone's genuine need or from their pattern of depending on others unnecessarily? Can I give this help joyfully, or would it create resentment? What would love look like in this situation, both love for myself and love for the other person?" This process wasn't always easy or quick. Sometimes Alex had to say, "Let me think about this and get back to you." Sometimes Alex had to negotiate, "I can't do all of that, but I could help with this part." But gradually, Alex developed what felt like a new sense, a kind of internal compass that could detect the difference between healthy giving and depleting giving, between necessary boundaries and isolating walls. One day, Alex was tested in a way that brought everything into focus. A family member called with a crisis, not a manufactured emergency, but a real situation that required immediate support. The old Alex would have dropped everything and rushed to fix it. The newer Alex might have said, "I can't take this on right now." But in this moment, Alex found the middle way. "This sounds really difficult," Alex said. "I care about you and I want to help. Let me see what I can do." Then Alex paused, checking in with herself. "I can come over this evening and we can figure out next steps together. But I can't stay the whole night. I have commitments tomorrow that I need to honor." Is that helpful? The family member was so relieved to have any support that they readily agreed. And that evening, instead of taking over and solving everything, Alex helped the family member think through their options and connect with other resources. Alex provided emotional support and practical guidance without becoming responsible for the entire solution. Driving home that night, Alex felt a satisfaction she had never experienced before. It was the satisfaction of having helped meaningfully without losing herself in the process. Of having shown up with love while also honoring her own needs and limits. This is what the Buddha meant when he taught about the middle way, not just avoiding extremes, but finding the dynamic balance point where wisdom and compassion can flow together. Alex began to notice that this balance was something that needed to be found fresh in each situation. What felt balanced in one moment might not be balanced in another. When Alex was well rested and energized, she could give more freely. When Alex was depleted or going through her own difficulties, the balance point shifted, requiring more boundaries and self-care. It's like learning to dance, Alex reflected one morning during the daily 10 minutes of sacred time. You can't just memorize the steps and repeat them. You have to feel the music and respond to your partner and adjust your movements moment by moment. This dance metaphor felt especially apt because Alex was learning that the middle way wasn't a solitary practice. It required awareness not just of your own needs and capacity, but also of the genuine needs and capacity of others. There were times when Alex realized that saying no to someone's request was actually the most loving thing to do, not because Alex couldn't help, but because helping would prevent the other person from developing their own strength and capability. There were other times when Alex realized that pushing herself slightly beyond her comfort zone to help someone was exactly what both Alex and the other person needed, not the old destructive self-sacrifice, but the kind of generous stretching that comes from abundance rather than depletion. The Buddha taught that the middle way is ultimately about wisdom, the wisdom to see clearly what each situation actually requires, free from the distortions of habit, fear, guilt, or the need to prove anything. Alex was developing this wisdom slowly, through trial and error, through moments of getting it right and moments of missing the mark. But with each experience, the internal compass grew more reliable, the ability to find balance became more natural. And Alex was beginning to understand that this balance wasn't just about individual decisions, but about a whole new way of engaging with life, a way that honored both the deep human need for connection and service, and the equally deep need for self-respect and personal sustainability. But there was another layer to this balance that Alex was just beginning to discover. It wasn't just about when to give and when to receive, but about understanding the profound interconnectedness that makes giving and receiving part of the same sacred dance. There was a morning when Alex woke up feeling unwell, not seriously ill, just run down and achy in the way that signals the body's need for rest and care. In the old days, Alex would have pushed through, taking care of everyone else's needs while ignoring her own body's clear signals. In the phase of rigid boundary setting, Alex might have cancelled everything and stayed isolated until feeling better. But now, something different happened. Alex called a friend and said, "I'm not feeling well today. Would it be possible for you to bring me some soup and maybe just sit with me for a little while?" The words felt strange coming out of Alex's mouth. When was the last time Alex had asked for help when sick? When had Alex ever allowed herself to be vulnerable and dependent, even temporarily? The friend's response was immediate and warm. "Of course. I'll be there in an hour. Do you need anything else?" As Alex waited for the friend to arrive, something unexpected happened. Instead of feeling guilty for being a burden or ashamed of needing help, Alex felt grateful. Grateful for having someone to call, grateful for the friend's willingness to help, and strangely, grateful for the opportunity to practice receiving. When the friend arrived with soup and kindness, Alex experienced something profound. Allowing herself to be cared for wasn't just about getting her needs met. It was giving her friend the gift of being needed, the joy of being able to offer comfort and support. "Thank you for letting me help," the friend said as they sat together. "You've done so much for others over the years. It feels good to finally be able to give something back." In that moment, Alex understood something fundamental about the dance of giving and receiving that she had never seen before. When you're always the giver, you're actually depriving others of the joy and growth that comes from giving. When you never let yourself receive, you're robbing others of the chance to experience their own generosity and capability. This insight revolutionized Alex's understanding of what the Buddha meant by interdependence. It wasn't just that we're all connected, it was that the very act of giving and receiving is what creates and maintains those connections. It's a sacred circulation, like the breath of the world itself. Alex began to see this circulation everywhere. The neighbor who felt proud and capable when Alex asked for help with a heavy package. The family member whose confidence grew when Alex sought their advice about a problem. The friend who lit up when Alex finally accepted their long-standing invitation to dinner. "I never realized," Alex reflected, "that my refusal to receive was actually a form of selfishness. I was keeping all the giving to myself and not letting others experience the joy of generosity." This recognition led to a profound shift in how Alex approached relationships. Instead of seeing herself as the strong one who helps the needy ones, Alex began to see everyone as having unique gifts and capacities, things they could give and things they needed to receive. With one friend who was excellent at organizing, Alex learned to ask for help with planning events. With another who was a gifted listener, Alex learned to share personal struggles. With a family member who was creative and artistic, Alex learned to ask for help with aesthetic decisions. Each time Alex received help, two things happened. Alex's own burden was lightened, and the other person experienced the satisfaction of using their gifts in service of someone they cared about. But the dance of giving and receiving revealed an even deeper truth. Alex began to notice that the best gifts she could give others weren't always material help or solutions to problems. Sometimes the greatest gift was simply receiving what others offered with gratitude and grace. When someone shared their knowledge with Alex, receiving it fully and appreciating it was a gift to them. When someone offered comfort during a difficult time, allowing yourself to be comforted honored their caring heart. When someone wanted to celebrate Alex's successes, letting them do so fed their joy in her happiness. The Buddha taught that this circulation of giving and receiving is one of the fundamental principles of existence. Just as the earth gives nutrients to plants, which give oxygen to animals, which give carbon dioxide back to plants, so human communities thrive on the constant exchange of care, attention, resources, and support. Alex experienced this principle in action during a particularly challenging week when several small crises coincided. In the old days, Alex would have handled everything alone, becoming increasingly stressed and isolated. In the rigid boundary phase, Alex might have said no to everything and withdrawn completely. But now, Alex found herself naturally orchestrating a web of mutual support. When asked to help with one situation while dealing with another, Alex said, "I can't take this on fully right now, but I know someone who might be able to help. And actually, if you could help me with this other thing, we could both get what we need." What emerged was a beautiful network of people helping each other, with Alex as a connector and facilitator rather than the sole provider. Everyone's needs were met, relationships were strengthened, and the burden was shared rather than concentrated on one person. This is how communities are supposed to work, Alex realized. Not with one person doing everything for everyone, but with everyone contributing their unique gifts to the whole. This understanding transformed Alex's relationship with her own limitations. Instead of seeing her inability to do everything as a failure, Alex began to see it as an invitation for others to contribute. Instead of feeling guilty when she couldn't help with something, Alex learned to say, "I can't help with this, but let me think about who might be able to." The dance of giving and receiving also revealed the importance of timing and rhythm. There were seasons when Alex needed to receive more, during illness, stress, or major life transitions. There were seasons when Alex had abundant energy and could give more freely. Learning to recognize these natural rhythms and honor them became part of the wisdom of the middle way. During a period when Alex was going through a significant personal challenge, she found herself needing more support than usual. Instead of feeling ashamed of this need, Alex learned to communicate it clearly. "I'm going through a difficult time right now and could use extra support. I may not be able to give as much as usual for a while, but I'll be back to full capacity soon." The response was overwhelmingly understanding and supportive. People stepped up to help, and far from feeling burdened, They seemed honored to be trusted with Alex's vulnerability. Months later, when Alex had worked through the challenge and regained her equilibrium, she found herself naturally stepping up to support others who were going through their own difficult times. The circle completed itself organically, without keeping score or tracking debts. This is what the Buddha meant when he taught about the flow of karma, not a mechanistic system of reward and punishment, but a natural circulation of energy, where kindness and support flow where they're needed, when they're needed. Alex also discovered that receiving gracefully was actually a skill that required practice. When someone complimented her work, Alex learned to say, "Thank you," instead of deflecting or minimizing. When someone offered help, Alex learned to accept it appreciatively, instead of insisting she could handle everything alone. Receiving well is actually a form of giving, Alex realized. When I receive someone's gift graciously, I'm giving them the gift of knowing their offering was valued and appreciated. This dance of giving and receiving began to extend beyond personal relationships into every area of Alex's life. At work, Alex learned to acknowledge colleagues' contributions while also allowing her own contributions to be acknowledged. In community settings, Alex learned to both offer her skills and to seek out others' expertise. The result was a life that felt more connected, more sustainable, and more joyful. Instead of the isolation that comes from always being the giver, or the depletion that comes from always being the receiver, Alex experienced the dynamic balance of mutual exchange. But perhaps the most profound discovery was how this dance reflected a fundamental spiritual principle. In Buddhism, the practice of giving, dana, and the practice of receiving are both considered forms of spiritual cultivation. When done with awareness and love, both transform the heart and deepen wisdom. Alex began to see that every exchange, whether giving help to a neighbor or receiving comfort from a friend, was an opportunity to practice presence, compassion, and interconnectedness. Each moment of the dance was both a practical transaction and a spiritual practice. Maybe, Alex reflected during one of her morning meditation periods, the point isn't to be perfectly balanced at every moment. Maybe the point is to be conscious and loving in the dance itself, trusting that over time, the giving and receiving will find their own natural equilibrium. As Alex settled into this understanding, a new question began to emerge. If this dance of giving and receiving was creating such harmony in personal relationships, what would happen if Alex began to see this same interconnectedness operating on a larger scale? What if the boundaries between self and others were even more fluid than Alex had realized? This question would lead Alex to perhaps the most profound discovery of all, the understanding that loving yourself and loving others are not two separate activities, but two aspects of the same ultimate reality. There are moments in life when the veil of ordinary perception lifts, and you see something that was always there but previously invisible. For Alex, this moment came on an unremarkable Tuesday evening while walking through the neighborhood. Alex had been reflecting on the dance of giving and receiving, feeling grateful for how relationships had transformed through the practice of balance. The air was soft with the approach of evening, and other people were out walking too, an elderly couple moving slowly arm in arm, a parent pushing a stroller, teenagers laughing together on a corner. As Alex walked, something shifted in perception. Instead of seeing separate individuals going about their separate lives, Alex began to see something else entirely. It was as if a hidden pattern suddenly became visible, like seeing the interconnected web that connects all points of light in a vast constellation. The elderly couple supporting each other through uncertain steps. The parent tender with their child. The teenagers finding joy in friendship. Alex walking alone, but not alone, part of this same human tapestry. And beneath all the apparent differences, age, circumstances, concerns, something fundamental was the same. Everyone was seeking happiness. Everyone was trying to avoid suffering. Everyone was doing their best with what they had, in circumstances they didn't entirely choose. Everyone was carrying both wounds and wisdom. Everyone was vulnerable. Everyone was precious. "We're all the same," Alex whispered to the evening air. At the deepest level, we're all exactly the same. This wasn't an intellectual understanding, but a direct perception, as clear and undeniable as seeing the color of the sky. The boundaries that usually separated Alex from other people became transparent, revealing an underlying unity that had always been there. In Buddhism, this recognition is called seeing Buddha nature, the fundamental goodness and potential for awakening that exists in every being. But it's more than a teaching or belief. It's a direct seeing that transforms everything that comes after. As Alex continued walking, this new perception deepened. A man sat on his porch looking worried, and Alex felt that worry as if it were her own, not taking it on as a burden, but recognizing it as the same worry she had felt countless times. A woman tended her garden with loving care, and Alex felt that same tenderness she had learned to show her own inner garden. The boundaries hadn't disappeared. Alex was still Alex, walking in her own body, living her own life. But the sense of fundamental separation had dissolved. It was like recognizing that all the waves on the ocean, however different they appear, are expressions of the same water. This recognition brought with it a love unlike anything Alex had experienced before. It wasn't the love you feel for someone because they're special to you, or because they've earned it, or because you hope for something in return. It was love simply because they existed. Love because they were part of the same fundamental reality as Alex. Walking past a convenience store, Alex saw a clerk who looked exhausted and overwhelmed, dealing with a difficult customer. In the old days, Alex might have felt pity or wanted to help. In the boundary-setting phase, Alex might have hurried past to avoid getting involved. But now, Alex felt something different, a deep recognition of kinship. That could be me, Alex thought. That is me, in another form, in other circumstances. Alex went into the store, bought a small item, and when reaching the clerk simply said, "I hope your evening gets easier." The clerk looked up, surprised by the genuine warmth in a stranger's voice, and smiled for the first time that day. This wasn't helping from a sense of obligation or superiority. It was one wave on the ocean acknowledging another wave, offering what little support it could, simply because they were part of the same vast sea. As Alex walked home, the new perception continued to unfold. The trees lining the street weren't just decorative objects but living beings, breathing in what Alex breathed out, part of the same intricate web of life. The evening sky wasn't something separate to admire, but the same space that held Alex, held everyone, connected all things in its vast embrace. How did I never see this before? Alex wondered. How did I spend so many years feeling so alone when I was never actually separate from anything? The answer, Alex realized, lay in what the Buddha called the illusion of the separate self. For years, Alex had identified completely with the voice in her head, the story of Alex with all its particular history, needs, and concerns. This identification was so complete that it created the illusion of being fundamentally separate from everyone and everything else. But learning to love herself had begun to dissolve this illusion. The more Alex developed a loving relationship with her own mind and heart, the more she could see that the same fundamental consciousness was looking out through every pair of eyes, feeling through every heart, experiencing itself through every individual life. This wasn't a loss of individuality, but a recognition of what individuality actually was, unique expressions of the same underlying reality, like different instruments in an orchestra, playing the same cosmic symphony. Over the following days, this new perception continued to deepen and stabilize. Alex found herself naturally treating everyone with more kindness, not because she was trying to be a better person, but because the boundaries that had created the sense of other had become transparent. When someone cut in front of Alex in line, instead of irritation, there was understanding. They must be in a hurry, probably stressed about something. I felt that urgency too. When a neighbor was rude, instead of taking it personally, there was compassion. They must be having a difficult day. I know what it's like to have pain come out sideways. This didn't mean becoming a doormat or losing the ability to set boundaries. If anything, Alex became clearer about what was appropriate and inappropriate behavior. But the emotional charge around these situations dissolved. It was easier to address problems when you weren't taking them as personal attacks on your separate self. Alex also noticed a change in how she related to her own emotions and experiences. Previously, Alex's thoughts and feelings had seemed like the most important things in the universe, the center around which everything else revolved. But now they were seen more clearly as weather patterns moving through the sky of consciousness. When sadness arose, it wasn't Alex's sadness that needed to be fixed or avoided, but sadness itself, the same sadness that moves through countless beings, an ancient and familiar visitor that would pass in its own time. When joy appeared, it wasn't possessively grasped, but recognized as the same joy that sparkles through children's laughter, lovers' reunions, and artists' moments of inspiration. This shift brought tremendous relief. Instead of being trapped in the narrow confines of personal drama, Alex felt connected to something vast and eternal. Problems that had seemed overwhelmingly important revealed themselves as small waves on an infinite ocean. But this new perception also brought responsibility. If there was no fundamental separation, if everyone was part of the same interconnected web, then the suffering of others wasn't someone else's problem. It was simply suffering, appearing in the field of awareness just like Alex's own suffering had appeared. This didn't mean trying to fix everyone's problems or taking on the world's pain as a personal burden. That would be falling back into the old patterns from a new direction. Instead, it meant responding to suffering wherever it appeared with the same natural compassion Alex had learned to show herself. When Alex encountered someone in pain, the response was automatic and effortless, like one hand reaching to soothe the other when it's injured. There was no sense of sacrifice or martyrdom, just the natural movement of love responding to need. One evening, Alex encountered a homeless person asking for help. In the past, Alex might have given money out of guilt or obligation, or avoided eye contact out of discomfort. But now, something different happened. Alex stopped, looked directly into the person's eyes, and saw the same consciousness looking back, the same Buddha nature that existed in everyone, temporarily clothed in different circumstances. Alex gave what she could practically offer, but more importantly, she offered recognition, dignity, and the acknowledgement of their shared humanity. "Thank you for seeing me," the person said, and Alex understood that this recognition was often more valuable than any material help. As Alex walked away, she realized that the gift had been mutual. In seeing the Buddha nature in another being, Alex had recognized it more clearly in herself. In offering dignity to someone society often treats as invisible, Alex had strengthened her own understanding of the inherent worth that belongs to every conscious being. This is what the Buddha meant when he taught about interbeing, the recognition that we don't exist as separate entities, but as expressions of the same underlying reality. When you help another, you help yourself. When you honor another, you honor yourself. When you love another, you love yourself. But Alex was beginning to understand that this recognition was just the beginning. Seeing the interconnectedness of all life was transformative, but it also raised a question: what was the appropriate response to this seeing? How should one live when the illusion of separation had been recognized? The answer would lead Alex to perhaps the most beautiful discovery of all, the understanding that loving yourself naturally evolves into loving all beings, and that this universal love is not an abstract ideal, but a practical way of living that brings joy to both the giver and receiver. The recognition of interconnectedness brought Alex to a crossroads she hadn't expected. Having spent so many years learning to love herself, to set boundaries, to honor her own needs, Alex now faced a question that seemed to challenge everything she had learned. If there was truly no separation between self and others, what did it mean to take care of yourself? And how could you avoid falling back into the old patterns of self-sacrifice? The answer came through what seemed like an ordinary encounter but revealed itself to be a teaching of extraordinary depth. Alex was at the grocery store when she noticed an elderly woman struggling to reach something on a high shelf. The woman was too proud to ask for help, but clearly frustrated and a bit unsteady on her feet. Alex approached quietly and said, "Excuse me, can I reach that for you?" The woman's face lit up with relief and gratitude. "Oh, thank you so much, dear. These old bones aren't what they used to be." As Alex handed her the item, something beautiful happened. The woman's gratitude was so pure and genuine that it filled Alex with joy. Not the satisfaction of being helpful or the pride of being needed, but a simple, clear joy at being able to ease another's difficulty. In that moment, Alex understood something profound. When action comes from the recognition of interconnectedness, rather than from personal need or conditioning, helping others doesn't deplete you, it nourishes you. The boundaries between giving and receiving dissolve when you realize you're not actually giving to someone else, but participating in the natural flow of love within the one reality you're all part of. This wasn't the old pattern of compulsive helping that had led to burnout. This action arose spontaneously from seeing clearly what the situation called for, without the overlay of personal agenda, guilt, or the need to be needed. Driving home, Alex reflected on the difference. When I helped people before, there was always a sense of me helping them. There was effort, sacrifice, sometimes resentment. But just now, there was no sense of separate people at all. There was just love responding to need, as naturally as water flowing downhill. This recognition opened a door to understanding what Buddhism calls the Bodhisattva path, the way of those who dedicate their lives to the liberation of all beings. But Alex was beginning to see that this wasn't about becoming a saint or taking on impossible responsibilities. It was about living from the truth of interconnectedness rather than from the illusion of separation. In the days that followed, Alex began to notice how often opportunities arose to embody this understanding. A colleague was overwhelmed with a project, and Alex found herself naturally offering to help, not because she should, but because it felt as natural as moving your own hand to scratch an itch. A neighbor's car wouldn't start, and Alex offered a ride without any internal debate about boundaries or inconvenience. But perhaps most remarkably, taking care of Alex's own needs began to feel like the same kind of natural response. When tired, rest felt like a gift to the entire web of relationships Alex was part of. When energized, sharing that energy felt like the most obvious thing in the world. It's not that my needs matter more or less than others, Alex realized. It's that there aren't really separate needs at all. There's just what's needed in each moment to support the well-being of the whole. This understanding revolutionized Alex's relationship with what used to be called self-care. Taking time for meditation, eating nourishing food, getting adequate sleep, setting appropriate boundaries, these weren't selfish acts, but ways of caring for the vehicle through which love could flow into the world. One morning during meditation, Alex had a vision that clarified everything. She saw herself as one cell in a vast, living organism. When the cell was healthy and functioning well, it contributed to the health of the whole body. When it was depleted or diseased, it affected every other cell. The cell's job wasn't to sacrifice itself for the other cells, nor to ignore the other cells and focus only on itself. Its job was to be a healthy, vibrant cell, contributing its unique gifts to the whole. That's what I am, Alex realized. I'm one expression of consciousness, one note in the cosmic symphony. My job is to play my note clearly and beautifully, not to try to play all the notes or to remain silent. This insight brought tremendous freedom. There was no longer any conflict between self-love and love for others, because the self that was being loved was revealed to be the same self appearing as others. There was no longer any question about whether to help or to focus on personal needs, because both were recognized as ways of caring for the same underlying reality. Alex began to understand why the Buddha emphasized that enlightenment wasn't about escaping the world or transcending human concerns, but about seeing through the illusion that created suffering in the first place. When you recognize that you and everyone else are expressions of the same consciousness, service becomes as natural and joyful as self-care. This didn't mean saying yes to everything or losing the ability to discern. If anything, Alex became more sensitive to what each situation actually called for. Sometimes the most loving response was to help directly, Sometimes it was to refrain from helping so the other person could develop their own strength. Sometimes it was to take care of her own needs so she could show up more fully later. But all these decisions were now made from the same place, love responding intelligently to what would best serve the well-being of the whole. Alex experienced this most clearly during a family crisis when multiple people needed support simultaneously. In the old days, Alex would have tried to be everything to everyone, burning herself out in the process. In the rigid boundary phase, Alex might have protected herself by helping no one. But now, Alex found herself naturally coordinating care, helping some people directly while connecting others with different sources of support, taking care of her own needs while also contributing meaningfully to the solution. It was like conducting an orchestra, not playing every instrument, but helping each part contribute to the harmony of the whole. This is what love actually looks like, Alex realized. Not the desperate, depleting kind I used to think was noble, and not the fearful, withholding kind I thought was necessary for self-preservation. But love that's intelligent, sustainable, and connected to what's actually needed. This way of being also transformed Alex's relationship with what used to feel like sacrifices. When choosing to help someone meant postponing a personal plan, there was no sense of loss because the helping felt like a gift to the same self that would have enjoyed the personal plan. When setting a boundary meant disappointing someone, there was no guilt because the boundary was set with love for the whole situation, not just personal preference. Alex began to see that the Bodhisattva path wasn't about becoming superhuman or taking on impossible burdens. It was about living from love instead of fear, from connection instead of separation, from wisdom instead of conditioning. And perhaps most beautifully, Alex discovered that this way of living was profoundly joyful. Instead of the grim duty that helping others had sometimes felt like before, or the isolation that extreme self-focus had created, there was a constant sense of participating in something magnificent. Every interaction became an opportunity to embody love. Every challenge became a chance to respond with wisdom. Every moment of caring for her own needs became a way of tending the garden from which gifts could be offered to the world. One evening, as Alex sat in her garden watching the sunset, a profound gratitude arose. Gratitude for the journey that had led from depletion to balance to this recognition of unity. Gratitude for all the people who had been teachers along the way, including those who had seemed to take more than they gave. Gratitude for the struggles that had forced growth and for the love that had made growth possible. I never could have imagined, Alex whispered to the flowers that had taught her so much about patient nurturing, that learning to love myself would lead to this. To feeling so connected to everything, so clear about how to live, so full of love for this whole magnificent mess of existence. As the stars appeared in the darkening sky, Alex understood that the journey was far from over. There would still be challenges, still be moments of forgetting this recognition, still be opportunities to deepen and embody this understanding more fully. But something fundamental had shifted. The question was no longer how to balance self-love with love for others, but how to live more completely from the truth that they had never been separate in the first place. This understanding would guide everything that came next, not as a rigid philosophy, but as a living reality that continued to unfold with each breath, each choice, each moment of conscious participation in the dance of existence. The journey from empty cup to overflowing heart was revealing itself to have been all along, a journey from the illusion of separation to the recognition of love as the fundamental nature of reality itself. Wisdom is not something we possess once and keep forever. It's like a river. It needs to be nourished, renewed, and flowing continuously through our daily lives. Ongoing practice is the only way for wisdom to become a natural part of who we are. Each morning we wake up, we have an opportunity to begin again. Not starting from zero, but starting from the foundation of what we have learned, experienced, and understood. Like an artist who stands before their painting each day, we can add new brushstrokes to the canvas of our lives every single day. The first few minutes of the day are the most precious. Instead of rushing into work, take a few minutes to set the intention for the entire day. This could be sitting quietly and feeling your breath, setting a positive intention for the new day, remembering 3 things to be grateful for, visualizing how you will respond in difficult situations. These are not complex rituals, but simple moments to connect with yourself and the wisdom within. Mindfulness is not just sitting in meditation on a cushion. It's how we bring awareness into every daily activity. At work, instead of working mechanically, truly be present with what you're doing. When writing emails, write with your full attention. When talking with colleagues, truly listen. While eating, every meal is an opportunity to practice mindfulness. Feel the taste, texture, and colors of the food. Be grateful for the hands that grew and prepared the meal. While moving, whether walking, driving, or taking public transport, use this time to observe the world around you with awareness. Difficulties are wisdom's greatest teachers. When encountering challenges, instead of reacting automatically, stop. Create a space between stimulus and response. Breathe. Use your breath to find calm again. Observe. Look at the situation objectively. Choose. Respond from wisdom rather than emotion. This is how we transform difficult moments into opportunities to develop wisdom. Wisdom is not built from grand one-time actions, but from small habits repeated daily. 5 minutes of meditation each morning instead of 1 hour once a week. Reading 1 page of wisdom instead of trying to finish an entire book in 1 day. 1 deep question each day instead of trying to solve all of life's mysteries. 1 kind action instead of waiting for the opportunity to do something grand. Our surrounding environment greatly influences the development of wisdom, books and materials. Place wisdom books where they're easily visible. Community. Connect with people who share the journey of growth. Quiet space. Create a small corner in your home for reflection. Reduce noise. Limit unnecessary information. When night falls, this is the time to look back at the day that has passed. Not to judge or regret, but to learn and be grateful. What did I learn today? How did I respond in difficult situations? What could I do differently tomorrow? What am I grateful for today? Sleep is when our minds process and integrate all the day's experiences. For deep, quality sleep, let go, release all worries and tensions of the day. Forgive yourself for any mistakes. Be grateful. Thank your body and mind for working all day. Trust. Believe that tomorrow will bring new opportunities. Remember that wisdom is not a destination but a journey. There is no day when we can say, I have enough wisdom now. There is always more to learn, to understand, to develop. Be patient with yourself. There will be days when we fail, forget to practice, or react without wisdom. That's normal. What matters is that we always return, always ready to begin again. Wisdom is not about becoming perfect. It's about becoming more aware, more compassionate, and living more consciously each day. As you conclude today, let your mind rest. Like the sun setting to make space for the gentle moonlight, let the thoughts of the day settle down, creating space for peace. Place your hand on your heart and feel the steady rhythm, the sound of life continuing within you. Thank this body for carrying you through another day. Thank this mind for thinking and feeling. Thank this heart for loving. In the silence of the night, know that you are embraced by peace. Each breath is a gift, each heartbeat a reminder of the miracle of life. Let go of all worries, all tensions. Tomorrow will take care of itself. Now, let yourself rest in the arms of the quiet night. May you have deep sleep, beautiful dreams, and wake tomorrow morning with a heart full of gratitude and an awakened mind. Sleep well. Good night, and we'll meet again on the path of wisdom.